Amateur Traveler, episode 903. Today, Amateur Traveler talks about old ships and narrow boats, ancient baths and stone circles, Banksy, and a side of cheese, as we go on the Great West Way in southwest England. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler. Let's talk about England. I'd like to welcome back to the show Penny Sadler from adventuresofacarrion.com, who's come to talk to us about the Great West Way. Penny, welcome back to Amateur Traveler.
Hi, Chris. I have been really looking forward to doing this episode with you.
Excellent. And Penny has been on the show before talking about her hometown of Dallas. And this is not the road that heads west from Dallas. Where is the Great West Way?
So the Great West Way is an historic route and basically now a tourist route that goes from London to Bristol. From London to Bristol is about 2 hours. And along the way, there are charming market towns, old pubs, castle ruins, rolling hills, lots of farmland. It's very rural. Stonehenge, Avebury. There's so much to see. I spent 3 weeks recently in England in this area. I was there last year for a few days, 5 days, and I really enjoyed it. So I said, okay, I'm going back because there's just so much to see. And I could go back again and again. And there's so much history that you just can't take it all in. At least I can't. I love history, but I'm not great with remembering dates and names and things like that.
Excellent. I think that answered our question of why you should go. And I say welcome back to the show. Penny was also on the show just moments ago when I forgot to hit the record button. So if we sometimes sound like we're doing this again, we are. So Penny, my apologies here. We're going to start then in the East in London, and you get some things that you did there before we hit the road.
So London is interesting. I had not been in London for 30 years. And I had this great opportunity to stay in a really nice hotel in Mayfair called the Mayfair Townhouse. So I did. And while I was there, I went on a couple of one really interesting pub tour, food tour, walking tour with Devour Tours, where I've done some tours with them in other places, and I find they're always interesting. And
I love a good food tour. So you had me at food tour. So
well, pub food now. This is very. I don't know how you feel about pub food. Scotch eggs.
Pub food is okay. But for me, it's the combination of the food and usually you're getting some amount of history or culture or other interesting things as well. It's not just about the food that you're eating.
And that's what I really liked about this tour. We went to 4 pubs, and I'm not going to talk about every single pub we went to because it's no surprise for you if you decide to go and take this tour. It's going to ruin it, the whole thing. And I didn't know where I was going. We were about 6 people on this tour. Every place we went, especially the first place, we had no idea where we were going. As soon as we walked in, every single one of us said, wow, this place is really cool. Tiny old pub, about 500-600 years old. No TV set anywhere in sight. Just a bar, a few tables, and then there's a little alley that you have to find to go to this pub. In fact, they said that's probably one of the hardest pubs to find in London. So you really feel like you've found this hidden gem, and you have. Every place we went was like that, though. We went places that Shakespeare went. We went to a pub that Christopher Wren designed.
Which caught me by surprise because I thought he just did churches and cathedrals, but okay.
Yeah. And
I guess one doesn't start with a cathedral. You probably start with something smaller.
No, he was working on some big project, but he built the pub and a place for his workers to stay and hang out. I thought that was really interesting. And another fun detail of that first pub we went to This will give away where it is, but it's next to a cathedral. And the
Possibly a
street,
Christopher Wren cathedral?
no, no,
No? Okay.
but the street is the last, she tell me about it? It's the last private street in London. There's a lot of interesting things going on in that particular location. And then I went to the Borough Market, which is also a food thing.
I have been to Borough Market when I was working at Time Out London a few years back.
I loved the Borough Market. It's a little overwhelming because it's so busy, but it's still manageable. And there's every kind of food from any place you can imagine there. I had just finished writing a story about Somerset County cheddar cheese.
Because you sometimes write about cheese.
Yes, I do. I actually write more and more about cheese, which has been interesting and also tasty, I might add.
How does one get in to be a cheese writer? I do have to ask.
It was really an accident. I was searching a website about Italian businesses in Texas. And I found an Italian cheesemaker near Houston. And so I researched him, and I thought his story was interesting. And I pitched it to this publication called Cheese Professor, who I write for now.
Okay.
And she liked it. And that's how I started writing about cheese.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the first time I was in that area of England, I'm deviating here, but I'm just talking more about cheese. I visited 3 cheddar cheese producers.
Okay.
And I ended up writing about that as well. This brings me back to the Borough Market, where one of those producers was at the Borough Market the day I was there, and I got to meet them and finally to taste more of their cheese.
The cheese producer that you were tasting was?
Pitchfork.
Pitchfork, okay.
Yeah, Pitchfork is interesting. They're winning a lot of awards now, but they're from Wales originally, and they moved their dairy to Somerset. And since they were in the land of cheddar, they decided to try their hand at making cheddar. And as it turns out, they make damn good cheddar. Award-winning cheddar. Yeah. It was really fun to meet the people that I had just written about. But also at the Borough Market is Neal's Yard Dairy, which they export cheese all over the world. And not only English cheeses, but all cheese from everywhere. So a lot of the cheeses that we get from Europe, we get them because of Neal's Yard. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. But I also ate Spanish tapas when I was there. They had all kinds of drinks, booze, and vendors, and you could spend a lot of time in that market if you like food. I thought it was terrific. And it's also in an interesting neighborhood because it's right near the Tower of London.
Okay.
And in fact, the market started on the Tower Bridge, or maybe it was the old London Bridge. It started on the bridge.
Probably would have been the London Bridge because the London Bridge had houses on it and such, shops.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to think because there's been a market there for much longer than the date of the Borough Market. If you look online, it says since 1736 or something like that. But there's actually been a market there for much longer than that. People would bring live animals to the market and slaughter them so the meat would be fresh because there was no refrigeration, right?
Sure.
It's just crazy to imagine all of that going on. But anyway, it's an interesting area of London, very old area and busy.
Got it.
It's a nice place to take a walk on the River Thames as well.
Anything else we want to mention in London?
Oh, yes. Right by the market is Southwark Cathedral. And Shakespeare was a parishioner there. So there's an interesting monument to Shakespeare in the cathedral. There's a lot going on in that cathedral, all kinds of monuments to various and nefarious people as well. Like one was like a doctor who was known for selling snake oil. So,
Okay.
yeah, and it's also architecturally very interesting. It's the oldest Gothic building in London.
We talk about snake oil. Originally, snake oil had medicinal properties, and it got its reputation from people selling fake snake oil,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is not the way it continues in the English language.
Uh-huh. Okay, so there was such a thing as snake oil.
There was indeed. There was indeed.
That's so weird. What did they do with it?
I do not know.
Okay. Let's see. What else can I tell you about
How
London?
about Hatton Garden?
Oh, yes, Hatton Garden. So when I was on the pub tour, she pointed out Hatton Garden to us because it's very close to one of the pubs. So Hatton
Hmm.
Garden was a jewelry district, basically, mainly diamonds. It still is today,
Hmm.
but there's just not as many jewelers there as there used to be. And there's a movie. You knew the name of it, or you
The
looked it up.
Hatton Garden, the heist.
That movie is based on a true story of a big robbery that happened in, I think, was it 2015, or is that when the movie came
The
out?
movie's 2016, so I
Okay.
don't know when the heist was.
Maybe it was early 2000s,
Okay.
I want to say. So Hatton Garden actually was named after Sir Christopher Hatton, I believe, who was a favorite of Queen Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how that happened. But the food tour, they give you all those interesting little tidbits of history, and that's one of the things I like about it.
And then I think you had a bookstore in Mayfair you liked.
Oh, yes, Daunt Bookstore. I think people who are interested in travel will love Daunt Bookstore because they have a whole room just dedicated to travel. It's very old, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful bookstore. And I did buy a book there, a little book of essays about Italy.
Excellent. Anything else we want to cover in London before we hit the road?
I think I didn't have a lot of time in London, so I think we can move on.
All
Now,
right.
the question is, do we want to go to Stonehenge first, or
It's
do we want to
entirely up
go
to
to
you.
Malmesbury?
I don't know Malmesbury, so I will let you choose.
Malmesbury is pretty cool. I think I mentioned that there's all these little villages along the Great West Way.
Hmm.
You really do need a car to get
Okay.
to them, but you can take the train to a lot of places.
Hmm.
You can take a bus. Of course, driving is ideal. Or like I took tours because I don't drive there. Maybe I will one day, but
Well, with the driving on the left sort of thing?
yeah, I don't trust it. I'm afraid I'd end up in a
Just
hedgerow or
every
worse.
time you come to a turn, you just say to yourself, keep left?
Yeah, I just know. If I go back for a lengthy period of time, I will take a driving lesson. I decided.
Okay.
Yeah, but I thought, no, I'm just going to leave the driving to somebody else. The other thing you can do that's really cool is you can take a canal boat from London to Bristol. And I did do a canal boat day, so I'll tell you about that in a
Oh,
bit.
okay.
Yeah, that was really cool. But first, Malmesbury. I have a friend who lives in the area who has a tour company. So I'm just going to say if you want to take tours around Southwest England and you want to see some of these smaller places that not everybody goes to, you need to check out my friend's tour company called In and Beyond Bath,
Okay.
or Bath, as they say. That is their specialty, and that is how I ended up visiting Malmesbury, for example, a place I would never have thought of going on my own. It's small, so you don't have to spend a lot of time there. You could spend a day if you wanted. There's a beautiful sort of luxury boutique hotel there called the Old Bell that is the oldest hotel in England.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Dates back to the 1200s. And it's been recently some updates, but they haven't modernized it so that it looks 21st century by any means.
It does have indoor plumbing, though, I'm assuming.
Plumbing, yes.
Okay. Some modernization is helpful.
Yeah, the kind that we want. It's just a beautiful spot. The original fireplace is still there. we just stopped in there so we could see it and also have a cup of tea and just talk about what we were going to do next, plan our next adventure. But so that's the old bell. Funny enough, it's now owned by a couple from Dallas.
Okay.
I should have looked them up before I went. But anyway, Malmesbury, at one point, it was the capital of Saxon England.
Okay.
And the first king of England was, I'm going to try and say this right, Athelstan, crowned in 925, and then as the Saxon, and then again in 937 as king of all England. And his tomb is in the abbey in Malmesbury. They don't know where his remains are because when the abbeys were dissolved in the 1500s, I believe, his remains were moved and nobody knows what happened to them, really. But so they keep a tomb for him at the abbey there. And it's interesting. This is an interesting little tidbit. If you go to Bath, and I will talk about Bath, the abbey in Bath has a beautiful stained glass window honoring King Edgar or King Edward.
You'd be Edward.
Okay.
There's no King Edgar.
No Edgar. Okay. So King Edgar, the first king of all England. So who was really the first king of England? My tour guide says Bath is just trying to get in on the action. Athelstan was the first king of all England.
Okay.
So I don't know what to say about that, but I would like to have a little chat with the folks in Bath Abbey about it. So the other thing that's really interesting about the Abbey in Malmesbury is when you enter, they call it the porch. And the porch has this big, beautiful doorway, like archway, with several sort of, I don't know how else to describe it, like layers of carved stone, basically telling the story of the evolution of Christianity. And a lot of it's so very old, but you can still see it. It's amazing. And then there's also a beautiful illuminated Bible there. And there's a lot of detail, little plaques with all the details about how they made the ink, how they made the paper, and what kind of materials they use. I just geek out about all those little details. They mix charcoal with whatever. I don't know. I just think it's fascinating how they did things because now we just open up our laptops and type. Right? We don't have to grind up anything to make ink to create a book or a document.
No.
So.
Ah, bon chien. Bonjour, je suis Theo, a tour leader with Explore. And this is Punti. He's helping us find truffles under the trees next to this beautiful vineyard. Maybe for tomorrow's cooking class? We call it semi-heure. Parfait. Semi-o'clock. Not everyone gets to enjoy a Bordeaux sunset this way, but you will if you explore. No, Punti. Search exploreworldwide.com and don't just travel. Explore.
Anyway, that's Malmesbury. I really liked Malmesbury. Oh, the one other thing in Malmesbury, we didn't spend a whole lot of time there, but there's a beautiful, they call it a market cross. And what a market cross is, or it was, a place where people brought their goods to buy, sell, trade. And this particular market cross is just really architecturally kind of amazing how it's even got like the fan vaulting like you see in cathedrals. So if I had my choice, I would have stayed a little longer in Malmesbury. I really enjoyed it. It's just one of those little hidden gems. It wasn't crowded. So everybody wants to go to the Cotswolds, right? They want to go to Castle Combe. Well, you can go to Castle Combe. It's going to be crowded, probably. Admittedly, we did not go at the most ideal time.
And on the Great West Way, you're almost all the way to the west here. We're about 25 miles from Bristol when we're at Malmesbury. Is there anything you want to cover that we jumped ahead of to get to your favorite town of Malmesbury?
Oh, you're looking at a map. See, I'm not even looking at I'm not even looking at a map
I
because
cheat.
so I guess where's Avebury? Avebury would be for Malmesbury, right?
Yes, further to the east.
Yeah. So let's talk about Avebury because everybody goes to Stonehenge,
Mm-hmm.
but fewer people, at least Americans, go to Avebury. And
Right,
I
which is
actually went there
another stone
before.
circle.
Right. And it's a henge, just like Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't know what a henge is. A henge is basically just a circular ditch that surrounds the monument.
Okay.
It's like a trench. So if you look at photographs that are aerial shots, it's really
Mm-hmm.
easy to see what is a henge. But Avebury, I think, is really cool because, first of all, it's free. And you can walk amongst the stones.
Right.
So you can't do that at Stonehenge anymore. The stones are more spread out. The sheep are grazing there, so you can hang out
Right.
with the sheep. I just really liked it. There's a big, beautiful tree, like with the roots coming up out of the ground, and the pagans go and tie their ribbons on the roots of the tree and on the tree branches. So both Avebury and Stonehenge are still very much used for sort of their original purpose, which was spiritual, religious practices, basically. Community,
Mm-hmm.
people gathering in community to practice whatever it was they were in that day. And the other thing that's really cool near Avebury, basically across the highway, is West Kennet Longborough. And West Kennet Longborough is a burial mound, and you can actually walk inside of it. And it's big enough. I'm not very tall anyway, but I could stand up in it. And then there's Silbury Hill, the largest artificial prehistoric mound in Europe.
In Europe. Okay.
Yeah. And they think Silbury Hill took about 200 years to build, but they don't really know what it is or why it was built. It reminds you a little bit of the pyramids of Egypt, but it's not nearly that interesting looking. It's just a big hill covered in grass. But you can't go there or walk there because they're basically protecting it now from erosion.
Obviously, in the U.S., we also had the mound builders among the Native Americans, and we only have some idea of what they were for, some sort of
Yeah.
religious purpose.
Yeah. Will we ever know? I don't know. We're learning all these new things every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating that those stones weigh something like 25 tons each. How did they even get them upright?
And now we're back to Stonehenge there when we're talking about stones weighing that much.
So Stonehenge, I saw Avebury before I saw Stonehenge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing because Avebury is so much more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't been to Stonehenge, I had not been, and I really wanted to go. And so I went on one of Jules Inn and Beyond Bath. I went on one of their tours. And that was really good because he really drove home the complexity or the mystery even of how did they do that? How did they get these 25-ton stones upright? How did they all originally had capstones on them? How did they do that? And there's grooves for them. It's very precise. And just for people who don't know, Stonehenge is actually an astronomical clock. That's what Stonehenge is. Fun fact, did you know that Stonehenge took 800 years to build?
I did not know that, no.
And obviously lots of different people are in on this. And cultures change, right? So it's interesting to think, did the people who came later have a different idea of why they were doing what they were doing?
I do not. I should clarify, Stonehenge is before my time. So it was
Come on, I
5,000
thought you
years
had
old.
all the answers.
So no, it's been a little while
I'm
before
counting on you now.
Came around.
So yeah, I think just all of the questions that it raises are what makes it an interesting place to visit. If I were going to do this over, I would walk from the visitor center out to the monument so that it feels more of a surprise when you see it suddenly, because the visitor center is downhill from Stonehenge. So you don't see it until you're there. But if you were walking, it would gradually appear instead of suddenly appearing because you're there. It's 2 miles from the visitor center to Stonehenge. That could be, depending on how fast you walk, 40 minutes. If you walk a 20-minute mile, let's say,
Right.
you need a couple of hours to walk up there and back, more or less, hour and a half, plus just however long you're going to spend there. And you can stay as long as you want. I don't know. That's what I would like to do.
And then you had a village near there that you wanted to recommend.
Laycock Village, yes. Laycock Village is very near Avebury, so it's a good place. You can visit those two places in the same day really easily. And Laycock Village, you have been there, or you've seen it.
No, I haven't been to Laycock. Oh,
But you've seen it, even though you don't know you've seen it, because they use Laycock Village in a lot of movies, because this is perfectly preserved medieval village. And it's been used in a lot of scenes for Downton Abbey. The Laycock Abbey was used in a Harry Potter movie. So you've been there, even if you haven't been there in a movie. And it's really a very charming place. The Abbey, the cloister is beautiful. The Abbey was a home for a while to William Henry Fox Talbot. He developed the first photographic negative. You can tour the house. You can tour the cloister. The cloister is actually a lot smaller than I expected it to be, so it's interesting. If you've seen the Harry Potter movies, it stands in for the Great Hall, and in the movie it looks much bigger than it really is.
not for the Great Hall, but for the Cloister Walk.
The Cloister Walk, yes.
Yep.
Okay. But anyway, I love architecture like that. So I recommend Laycock Village for sure. There's the George Inn if you want to stay there, because it is well located, Laycock. You would need a car, but you could stay there at the George Inn. So yeah, those are things you could easily do in a day close together.
Excellent. And what do we do the next day?
Before we leave, I want to tell you to eat at the Salutation Inn. Really nice pub, reasonable prices, good beer list. And that's near any of those places. Everything's so close together, Chris. you feel like, okay, we're only 25 miles from Bristol or whatever, but it's all just so close. It's not like Texas where it takes all day just to get halfway out of town, it seems.
Yeah, I've seen a road sign in Texas that described everything in hours. And it was San Antonio 2 hours, El Paso tomorrow.
True. Yeah, it's like that. So, yeah, let's see. Should we go to Bath or should we go to another random place that you can see?
Let's do a random place. We have a whole episode on Bath.
Oh, okay. So a random place that you can see in this area is called Nunney. 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 And there's a little river that goes through Nunney. But what's really interesting about Nunney is there's a castle there. Well, castle ruins. The castle was basically destroyed during the English Civil War. But the English Heritage Trust now owns the castle ruins. And there's a moat around the castle. So it looks very official castle-like. It's free to visit. I thought it was very atmospheric there. And the other thing that's cool there, if you can time it, they do concerts and events there.
Oh,
so you can sit on the lawn on one side of the moat, and the band might be on the other side of the moat.
Okay.
Which I think would be really fun. Yeah, I enjoyed the castle. It was interesting because where you cross over the moat to go inside, you can only go on the first floor of the ruins. There's a stairway which is still intact that you can see, but of course they don't want you climbing on anything or trying to scale the castle. So when you cross over, there's a little fence just in that area. And our guide said that someone's kid had fallen in the moat. He was okay, but it then caused this fence to be put up. And we were just laughing about it because, in the US, you would never get close to anything like that, right? There would be fences and bars and plexiglass. And do you know what I mean? To me, it seems like things are so accessible there compared to here in the US. Just being able to just walk right into the ruins of a castle from the 1600s. Where can you do that in the U.S.? I don't know.
They don't let you walk into any castles from the 1600s in the U.S., strangely enough.
Because what's the oldest thing we've seen here? The oldest thing I know of is the missions.
St. Augustine would be older.
Okay. But there's no castle there.
There's a fortress. I'm heading there in 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, let me know if it compares to Nunney Castle. Nunney Castle is really cool. And again, it's just one of those little tiny places that you wouldn't go or maybe even know about if you didn't have a guide or somebody in the area saying, hey, go to Nunney. It looked like a great place to just stop in the pub and have a beer, to be honest with you. But
where to next?
There is actually a place nearby called the Bath Arms.
Okay.
Where you can sit outside and have a beer. And we did. And it's right near Longleat Safari Park.
Okay.
Did not go to Longleat Safari Park. I'm just using that as a geographic reference. Bath Arms, beautiful place with a little bit more of an upscale menu than most pubs.
Okay.
I had a ploughman's lunch, which is a sandwich with, it's cheese because I have to eat cheese, and Westcombe cheddar, I might add, and house-made bread, like a nice thick bread, some mustards and chutneys and onion and I think caramelized onion, various accoutrements, and I had a soup and a small beer that was only 2 pounds. But my bill was about 37 USD.
Okay.
So so it's a little more expensive, but very nice. And speaking of cheddar, this is going to be so close to Bristol, you may not want to go there yet. Let's go next to Bradford-on-Avon.
Okay.
Bradford-on-Avon is so close to and convenient to Bath and London that it's actually become a pretty popular and expensive place to be. It's on the river, and Bradford actually means like broad ford. It's where you cross the river. And so how we ended up going to Bradford-on-Avon, I probably need to back up a little bit. Kennet-Avon Canal runs through Wiltshire and Somerset. And you can take a canal boat from London all the way to Bristol if you wish. So you can rent these boats for a small group. I think you can get to where you can sleep up to 6 people.
Okay.
You can bring your groceries on and you can live on this boat for 3 days, 4 days, a week. Or you can do what we did, and we just rented it for 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
So we picked it up at the marina, and just a shout out to ABC Canal Boats or Narrow Boats. They provided my boat for the day at the marina in Hilperton.
Okay.
And you can choose which direction you want to sail, but basically, one way is going towards dozens of locks.
Yeah, I see in the whole waterway of the Kennet and Avon Canal, there are 105 locks.
Yeah.
So in a half day, you couldn't do that.
No. We went towards Bradford-on-Avon and Bath.
Okay.
We didn't sail all the way to Bath. We sailed to Avon Cliff.
Okay.
And you pass one lock in Bradford-on-Avon. What we did is we went through the lock, which is very interactive. You have to get out and you have to close the gate and let the water fill and open the gate, the whole thing. It was so funny because they told us at the marina that there would be people there to help us, that there were a lot of volunteers. Well, when we got there were no volunteers. So it was my friend Jules and his girlfriend and her 2 kids and me.
And
And
this is a
so
narrowboat, so we're talking about 6 feet across, roughly, from side to side,
I guess so, yeah.
but
It's
much
not,
longer, obviously, from
yeah. The day
stem to
boat,
stern.
yeah. You couldn't sleep there, but
Mhm.
it did have a little kitchen and it
Okay.
did have covered seating area as well as an outdoor seating area.
Okay.
So there was plenty of space for everyone, but gratefully, so Jules had experience with the boats, and thank God for that, because he got us through the lock. But when we came back, there were volunteers, and so I got out and helped with the lock. And you have to crank it, and
Mhm.
it takes a bit of strength to do it. And so the volunteers showed me how to work the lock. The locks they're what? They're from the 1700s. They're very old. So it's amazing.
And if anybody's interested in more of this, we do have a whole episode on narrowboating in England and Wales way back in the archive that you can look up. I'm actually been talking to one of the boat companies about a potential trip in England, but we'll see about that. There's lots of things on my potential list.
Well, I recommend that highly. I love that. It's quiet.
Hmm.
So the boat's electric.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's electric and it really doesn't make any noise. It's very quiet. So you hear the birds.
Hmm.
There are swans, there are ducks, there are herons. There's a path, a bike and walking path that parallels the canal. So
Sure.
sometimes you see people walking, maybe they have some music. There's other boats passing you, but for the most part, it's just very peaceful.
Of
It's
course, the original boats were not electric when they were invented, so that's where your mule was pulling your boat.
yeah, I want to see that next time. That's fascinating. So yeah, so we sailed to Avon Cliff. We got out there and went
Hmm.
and had a beer. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the place we went, but there's really only 2 choices. One's on one side of the bridge and one's on the other side of the bridge. When we went back, we stopped in Bradford on Avon, and there's some artist studios. So you dock,
Okay.
and then when you get out and walk towards, I want to say the town, but we weren't really in the town. Where we stopped was by this beautiful tithe barn. It is mentioned because it's a tourist attraction, but we stopped there. And then when you walk out of there, there's some stone artist studios and a big playground for the kids and a cafe and a pub and whatever. So you can stop and get something to eat, something to drink, shop in the artist galleries. There was an art exhibition in one of the galleries when I was there. And there's also narrowboats docked there selling things. So there
Okay.
was a guy selling vinyl records and somebody else selling clothing. It was really cool. It was a really cool, all around great experience.
And for those who are wondering what a tithe barn is, that's where in the Middle Ages you would pay your tithe, your tenth of your crop, to the local church. And this is where they kept it before they sold it or used it to feed the poor or whatever.
Yeah, I wish you could see my photos of the tithe barn because there was a cross,
Hmm.
like a window, but shaped like a cross. There was no glass or anything over it. It was just
Hmm.
open. And the photos that I took there, it's like there's this mirror image
Hmm.
of this cross, but it's nowhere where you think it should be. Like, why is that even there? It's almost like this like ghost image of the cross.
Hmm.
It's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, so there's all this original artists and galleries. So you can do a little shopping for something unique as well while you're cruising down the river. Definitely something I would like to do again.
Excellent. Do you have
Yeah.
other destinations for us here along our route?
I have 2 more places
Okay.
for us to talk about, Bath and Bristol.
Okay.
Bath is famous for what, the Roman baths,
Right.
the architecture, the beautiful Bath stone that when the sun sets, it has this gorgeous, glowy,
Mm-hmm.
yellowy color. The Royal Crescent, which many people have seen now in Bridgerton. The Holborn Museum is also used as a home in the TV series Bridgerton. But I love Bath. I've been there twice now, and it's just a great place to walk around. It's not very big. It's very safe. And originally it was a Roman settlement.
Right.
So highly recommend the Roman baths. Fabulous place. So interesting. The springs that supply the baths still work. They're still producing water like thousands of years later. And there's a spa there that gets their water from those same springs. I think the number is something crazy like 250,000 gallons of water a day or something like that. I think the baths are fascinating. And a lot of people ask about the baths if you can get in the water, but you cannot.
Right. Not in the Roman baths, at least.
No, yeah. It's prohibited, and you wouldn't want to anyway. So I think the water has some sort of amoeba or an algae now that can be deadly, actually. You don't want to do that. I went to a really cool pub this time that I didn't do the last time called, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, the Coeur de Lion, the lion.
Okay, the Lionhearted.
I don't know.
Coeur de Lion is Richard the Lionhearted was Richard Coeur de Lion.
Okay. Great pub. Also very old, like everything in Bath. And there's a little upstairs bar or seating area with a window. So it's on this very narrow street. And you look out across this rooftop and you can't actually see that far. But it's just this very, I don't know, it just draws you in. What can I say about it? I loved it. You're just sitting there drinking your beer, looking at the moss growing on the tiles like feet from you. I don't know. It's a great spot. Lots of people outside. It's by the Guildhall.
Okay.
It's over in that area. And there's a little Greek restaurant right across from it. Yeah, great pub. Lots of atmosphere there. And I also stopped briefly in a place that is all over Instagram, so some people may want to know about this, called Sweet Little Things. Tall, narrow, pink facade. I didn't go upstairs. Apparently all the Instagram stuff is happening there. It's a great place
and
for
this is
your
tea house.
Yeah, basically. I think, and desserts also. Yeah. Cute place. But by far my best find in Bath this trip is the Bath Fine Cheese Company. They started in London, but I mean, I'm sorry, we're back to cheese.
It's
but
okay.
I can't help
It's
it.
okay.
And they also export, but any French cheese, English cheese, they export and import cheeses from all over the world. They also have a really charming little cafe.
Okay.
So you can have a coffee or lunch. The chef used to work in a Michelin star restaurant, so I recommend going there. And the people who work in the shop are so knowledgeable, and it's just a delightful place to go and taste some cheeses, buy some cheeses.
And do you have a recommendation? Are we tasting the local cheddar, or are we tasting something unique from somewhere in the world we've never heard of, or what are we doing?
I think both.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I tried a French brie.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk too much about this because I'm just writing this article now.
Got it.
So I don't want to let all my cats out of the bag.
When it's published, let me know and we'll link to it from this episode.
Okay. So. But yeah, I had a brie, an Alpine cheese that was covered in flowers, dried flowers, really, yeah. And they make their own biscuits and they sell all kinds of accoutrements. It's a really lovely spot. They've been there for 35 years. And it's interesting because when they opened, people said, oh, a cheese specialist? No way. That's not going to work. And here they are 35 years later. So from Bath, you're a 15-minute train ride to Bristol.
Okay.
And Bristol is as different from Bath as you can imagine. It's a city of about 500,000, I think. It's a very energetic city, I would say. Banksy is from Bristol.
Oh, okay. The artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Street artist.
So you can see some Banksys there for sure. I took a tour with a guy. His tour is called Where the Wall.
Okay.
And
I feel like that sentence is missing a few words, but okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. His name is John Nation, and he is very passionate about street art in Bristol. He's been involved in the street art evolution from day one.
Okay.
And he does a great tour. He just has so much energy. And he doesn't focus only on Banksy.
Okay.
So there's a lot of street art that is not Banksy, and he knows it. So it's a pretty long tour. It's about 2 hours. So you end up in Stokes Croft, which is kind of a very funky bohemian neighborhood with a lot of there's a concentration of street art in that neighborhood. And there's a very old Banksy called the Mild West that's on the side of a building. It's a stone wall, brick. And apparently, over the years, at least one person has offered to buy this Banksy for millions, and the owner won't sell. So it's that kind of a neighborhood. So yeah, I definitely recommend a street art tour if you're going to go to Bristol.
I love a good street art tour. I've been on a couple different ones, and it's a very interesting subculture. Different depending on where you do it.
Yes. Bristol is cool because it's a good-sized city. It's fairly spread out. I did use Uber sometimes to get around because I just couldn't get to where I needed to go fast enough if I didn't. It's a lot of walking, but it's safe. I felt safe there at least. And the other thing that if you're just going to go to Bristol for a day, their number one attraction is the SS Great Britain, which is an old passenger ship. I guess that's what you would call it. Built by or designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. So that's a name that's very well known in England. He was a civil engineer. He also designed Paddington Station.
Okay.
Yeah. So he did this ship that was the largest luxury cruise liner or I guess what we'd call a cruise liner today, to travel from England to the U.S. to New York. And it was funny because when it finally arrived in New York, everybody said, "Oh, we thought it was going to be much bigger." It seems like a very American perspective anyway. And he also designed the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which goes over the Avon Gorge. And I definitely want to shout out to Clifton because that is a gorgeous little neighborhood. Clifton Village, lots of small independent shops and cafes. It's a really great place to walk around. If you go up to the suspension bridge, there's a lot of hiking trails there as well. You can walk all the way across the bridge. I can't remember the name of that neighborhood, but if I go back, I would do that.
And this is, as the river Avon is getting close to Bristol, it's a gorge that this bridge is going over. Okay.
Yeah, it's a really scenic spot. There's also an observatory there.
Okay.
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot to do there besides just seeing the bridge.
Okay.
The day I went was sunny, the weather was nice, and there were just loads of people just flopped on the grass enjoying the sun.
Got it.
And fun place to eat in Clifton Village is called the Lido, like a swimming pool. And there is actually a swimming pool there. And the restaurant is built on one side.
Okay.
So it's on two levels. And I'd say they have an eclectic Mediterranean-inspired menu. It's a little bit more upscale, but definitely a unique experience having your meal while overlooking people having a swim.
How are they on cheese, though?
Oh, I actually did have an amazing mozzarella from Italy.
There you go. Okay.
Yep. From a place in Trastevere called La Lotteria or something like that. La Lotteria is probably how you say it. And actually, that cheese was a cheese I'd had on a food tour in Trastevere a couple years ago.
Okay.
So we've come full circle now.
Got it. The other thing that I would like to do if I'm there is this is also the home for the animation studio that did Wallace and Gromit. Speaking of cheese, you can apparently
yes.
tour that, and that would be something that I would enjoy.
Yeah, I did not do that. There's a lot of music in Bristol as well.
Okay.
They have a lot of festivals there. The harbor, food in Bristol. Another great place to go is Wapping Wharf,
Okay.
which is a development made out of cargo containers.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Well, these businesses are small, independent businesses. There's nothing that's franchisee or chain or anything. And there's a lot of great places to eat there and a cheese shop.
Well, we're on a roll here, so.
The only cheese shop in Bristol, I might add.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So Wapping Wharf, you'll find the SS Great Britain. There's also the Matthew, an old wooden sailing ship. I can't remember the details of that one.
The Matthew is a reconstruction of John Cabot's boat that he sailed to Newfoundland in 1497. So
yes,
quite an old time boat. This is a recreation, obviously.
Yes, and you can sail on it, but I think you have to book it well in advance.
I wouldn't recommend trying to go discover countries or continents or things like that. It's not a very big boat.
Very small boat. I did see that. And so there's a lot going on at the harbor. It's a really fun area to hang out.
Excellent. Yeah. We're winding this down. Anything else you want to say on Bristol, first of all, before we get to our wrap-up questions?
Bristol, I really enjoyed Bristol. I feel like it's a very vibrant, very independent city. And the food scene is so good there. There's a lot of Michelin chefs that have come there and opened their own place. So you can eat really well, but it's not Michelin prices.
Okay.
I just feel like there's a lot of creativity there and a lot of energy there. And for a decent sized city, very approachable.
Okay. And then anything else you want to say about the Great West Way?
The Great West Way. Do you have another hour? Because there's a lot to say about the Great West Way. It's a great road trip or a narrow boat trip. And you just stop in these tiny little villages and have a tea or a beer, and you just start to feel like that's all there is in life, right? To just relax and have a beer in Southwest England.
Excellent. Well, as we get to our wrap-up questions, you're standing in the prettiest spot along this route. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
Oh, that's too hard. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I didn't tell you about Frome. Oh, well, I won't tell.
Now you have to tell me about Frome.
Frome is just a funky little town it's actually pretty popular on Instagram. It has a pretty steep hill called Catherine Street.
Okay.
It's similar to Bristol, only much smaller, in that you just have this very artistic and independent spirited community of people. And I think it's once a month on a Sunday, they have an amazing market. I heard a jazz trumpeter, an opera singer. I went to a gin place where you can actually mix your own gin. I tasted so much gin, I got a little tipsy. It's just the market in Frome. If you're there for that, just go.
Now, was Frome the answer to the question of the prettiest spot, or was that just a distraction?
The prettiest spot. That's a distraction.
Okay.
The prettiest spot.
You were buying time. I get it.
Yeah, that's just so hard. I don't know. I love Bath. I love anything around the river.
Mhm.
The Avon River is just beautiful, I think. So if you're in Bath and the best place to be is on the river and you're looking towards the Weir, probably.
Okay, excellent. And
That's a nice spot.
one thing that makes you laugh and say only in Southwest England.
Oh my gosh. Only in Southwest England.
And it doesn't have to involve cheese.
The roads are so narrow there.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Ollie was driving and, at a pretty good pace, and you can't see anything for the hedgerows.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't see what's coming towards you if there's a curve in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Ollie, how do you know that it's going to be okay to just go around that curve? And he goes, I don't know, but I've never had an accident. Somehow it just always works out.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize the Great West Way in just 3 words, what 3 words would you choose?
Oh, wow. Historic,
Mm-hmm.
inspiring,
Okay.
and rural, I'd say.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Penny Sadler from adventuresofacarrion.com. And Penny, if we wanted to send people to your best post on this area on your website, what are we going to send them to?
Oh, so I have a post about visiting Somerset and Wiltshire.
Okay.
And things to see in both of those places. Yeah. And there's also a post about basically hanging out on your own in Bath, which I've done a couple times.
Excellent. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Penny, thanks so much for coming back on Amateur Traveler a couple times today and talking about the Great West Way and for your patience. I'm new at this. I've only been doing this 19 years. So
that's the thing. It never becomes old, does it?
Thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for the Great West Way and Southwest England.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks to the patrons who help support amateurtraveler.com. This is my full-time job now, and I appreciate their support. And a special thanks to Eddie, who became our latest patron this week. Thanks, Eddie. If you're interested in learning more about how to become a patron and help support the show and what you'll get, go to patreon.com/amateurtraveler. Speaking of patrons, I heard from Kevin, who became a patron recently. I discovered your podcast a month ago or so. I travel somewhat frequently to Southeast Asia and have enjoyed those podcasts in particular. You have a good style and format, good guests, very informative. Thank you. Well, and thanks so much, Kevin. And then I also heard from Nathan about Svalbard. I've been a longtime listener since about 2007 or so and really enjoy the show. Since I'm in the U.S. Foreign Service, we move around quite a bit to different countries, and it's nice to listen to the episodes in advance of a possible trip to places. Listening to the Svalbard episode from about a year ago helped me realize it is possible to visit this unique place in the Arctic Circle, so we decided to go on our latest R&R. Our family went to Longyearbyen in Svalbard in early June and really enjoyed it. The flight up there from Oslo stopped in Tromsø for exit immigration protocols from Norway, and on the return flight, we flew straight into Oslo from Longyearbyen on SAS and went through immigration in Oslo to re-enter Norway officially. At the Longyearbyen airport, there is a bus that picks people up and drops them at various locations around town, and we paid for the trip with a credit card on the bus. We booked a 2-night stay at the coal miners' cabins, which is about a 25-minute walk from the town center, and you can see the end of the glacier from the coal miners' cabins hotel. The rooms were warm and clean. The breakfast was good. Since it was June, we got up at midnight to take a picture of the midnight sun over the mountains across the bay. The kids were excited about that. It's relatively easy to book last-minute tour options on the official island website, which is en.visitsvalbard.com, and we booked a driving tour around the islands to see some of the key sites, including the Husky Dog Kennels, and drop us off at the functioning coal mine. The coal in Svalbard is unique. It feels very lightweight. The town has a lot of interesting history and places to visit, which was helpful having a guide on our tour to explain things. There's a nice grocery store in town, but more expensive than the mainland, and the tourist info center is helpful. The town is walkable and has nice restaurant options and some interesting Arctic museums. I highly recommend this as a unique place to visit. Just thought I'd share our family's experience in Svalbard. Best, Nathan. Thanks, Nathan. It's always fun to hear that people are listening to the show and going to the places that we talk about. In new articles on the Amateur Traveler blogs since the last podcast, there's a 3-day Exploring Southern California Hot Springs article that has gone up. Check that out at amateurtraveler.com. And with that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.